Let's bring in Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton on the breaking news as we do watch these pictures. Senator, what are your thoughts as you see this happening and now to think you've got classes canceled at Columbia University? I mean, why can't they get a hold of this situation?
Well, Sandra, I gather there were about 100 people arrested last night at NYU. It seems like there may need to be even more arrests today. These university presidents need to ask the mayor and the chief of police in New York to send in New York City's finest to arrest anyone who's breaking the law, who's squatting on private property when they've been told to disperse, who's harassing or intimidating Jewish students in a nascent pogrom, and demand that students actually do what they're supposed to do on campus, which is go to school. And by the way, any of these students who are foreigners here on visas should immediately have their visas revoked by the Biden administration and be promptly deported. They have no right to be here. They certainly have no right to be here spewing anti-Semitic and anti-Israel filth.
Okay. We know it's up to the universities to call the police on their campuses, right? Private universities. However, there were students, we had one sitting on set here, two, I should say, on set here yesterday, Jewish students who they feel so threatened. Their rabbi on their campus at Columbia is telling them to go home. They see the only solution to bring in the National Guard. Do you think that's needed?
Well, Sandra, first off, it's not the university's prerogative whether or not the NYPD come onto their campus. It would certainly be welcome if the university presidents and their police forces would cooperate with the NYPD. But New York City has an obligation to enforce the law and to protect innocent civilians like those Jewish students. If there's a crime being committed in a private home, the police have every right to go into the home to stop the imminent crime from being committed. So they certainly have every right as well. And yes, I do agree that if Eric Adams won't send the NYPD to protect these Jewish students, if Kathy Hochul won't send the National Guard, Joe Biden has a duty to protect these Jewish students from what is a nascent pogrom on these campuses. These are scenes like you've seen out of the 1930s in Germany. They should never be witnessed or tolerated here in America in 2024.
Well, the group that we are seeing organize the current walkout that's on your screen here, and for our viewers to know, Washington Square Park, New York University, this group that's organizing this is demanding, quote, to end all war profiteering and investment in genocide, a complete academic boycott of Israel, it reads. The removal of NYPD on campus and that NYU must protect free speech on campus and provide full amnesty to all students and faculty penalized for their pro-Palestinian activism. So let me ask you this. Who's behind this?
Well, Sandra, that's a very good question. It's something the Department of Justice should look into. These encampments didn't just spring up spontaneously, and it looks to me like they've got some pretty expensive camping equipment out there as well. I think it's worth asking, who's funding these organizations violating the law? Is it left-wing activist groups? Is it foreign governments? The Department of Justice should get to the bottom of it. In fact, I just wrote, along with the majority of Republican senators, to the Attorney General and the Secretary of Education, who have an obligation to enforce civil rights laws, to include the protection of religious liberty on campuses, why they aren't taking action to stop these nascent pogroms, in addition to doing things like finding out where the funding is coming from and who's generating them. Again, they don't look just spontaneous to me when they're sitting out there in $500 camping tents.
Just a final question on that. Now those who were arrested overnight, the more than 100 of them that were, they're claiming the arrests were violent, but that the violence we faced is only a fraction of the violence that the Palestinians face on the ground every day. Who's winning here? I mean, this lawless behavior, they're stopping police vehicles from moving on the streets. How do you see this ending?
Well, I have confidence in the NYPD. They're some of America's finest. If there was any violent arrests, I suspect it's because they were facing violence themselves. Yes, there is civilian suffering and deaths in Gaza. That's 100% the fault of Hamas, who is using civilians as human shields, trying to increase civilian deaths. That's what these protesters should be protesting, is the crimes that Hamas is committing against its own people, not Israel, which is trying to defend itself from another murderous attack on the state of Israel, or provide safe haven for the Jewish people from exactly this kind of harassment and intimidation that you now see on some of today's campuses.
Yeah, and I just want to confirm for our audience, of the 133 demonstrators that were arrested last night, the NYPD tells us they used zip ties and flex cuffs to remove the protesters from the campus. They were then taken on a police bus to headquarters. They were charged with trespassing. And we are still waiting further reaction from the mayor on how he plans to proceed as we watch this live together. Senator Cotton, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, John.